The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. This is a parent-to-parent day, and I'm very excited about that because this is a topic that I have been wanting to talk about for a while. Talking about COVID, and that just made me a little bit emotional thinking about what our kids lost in COVID. So we're going to be talking about that this morning, about potentially looking at different age ranges and what kinds of things your child might have lost if they were a certain age and now they're a certain age, and how we might go back and try to pick up those threads and thread it back in so that they are not permanently behind because of opportunities lost during COVID. So we're going to be talking about that in just a second. For those of you who are new to the show, I'm Shannon Penrod. I am a proud pony. That's how I identify. A parent of a neurodiverse individual. Those are the words that my son has given me to use. And I'm completely lost about which one is my camera. I guess I'm here. I'm just hopeless and out of touch today. So apologize. But thrilled to be here with you and awake and alive and with you talking about this topic, because if you're familiar with this show, we've been doing this show for 15 years, literally like this week, 15 years. And our mission has been from the beginning, and it continues to be, that we want to provide information and inspiration to the larger autism community. Now, what do I mean when I say larger autism community? We know that the beating heart, the center of our community, that would be individuals who identify with all the words that have to do with autism on the spectrum, neurodivergent, neurodiverse, plus anything autistic. What are all the words that people like to use? And we believe that it's important that how you identify is how you identify, and that we never want to take any issue with that or suggest that it should be something else. How you identify is how you identify. So that's the beating heart of our community, but surrounding those individuals are a group of people who love them, right? And so when we talk about the larger autism community, that's what we're talking about in toto. That heart and the people who surround them, who love them. I count myself as one of the surrounding people, and I know that those of you who share that same role as I do, you might be a parent, you might be a grandparent, you might be a spouse, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. You could be a behavior technician or a BCBA or a speech and language pathologist or a teacher, right? A doctor. You could be all of those things and be counted in that community. But what I think we all have, everybody in this community, including those individuals who identify in all those different ways, we all have different needs. We all have different opinions. I don't think there's a lot that our entire community agrees on, except on the rights of individuals that identify as being on the spectrum, and whatever words. I can't list all of them 13 times, but we respect all of the words. So that's what we're here for, to provide information and inspiration, and I hope that today will add that. Now, how do we do this? We podcast, and we are on several different channels. Our fabulous Chris Desmond is going to show you some of the different ways that you can interact on the screen. If you're not watching us on the screen, it's because you're listening to us in podcast. I want to say to you, if at some point you're like, what am I missing by not seeing it? Head over to YouTube. We have two very robust YouTube channels. One of them is Autism Live, and the other one is Ask Dr. Doreen. You can check them both out, both YouTube channels. We podcast as both of those monikers, and it is a free download wherever you get your podcasts. However, there is no such thing as free, right? Because there is a little bit of a cost every time you download. What we do is we allow sponsors to advertise on our feed, and that defrays the cost of you downloading it. So when you hear the ads, I hope you go, woohoo! I got this for free because these people paid for it. Isn't that wonderful? Although some of you have said to us, no, I'm running, it's not wonderful, I'd like to have it ad-free, you can. Just by heading over to glow.fm/autism live. It's $5 a month for everything we do with the Autism Network. We do a new show, whether it's Ask Dr. Doreen, whether it's Autism Live, whether it's interviews or Parent to Parent or any of our sister podcasts. If we do a new show, it shows up directly in your inbox, free of ads for $5 a month. So check that out, glow.fm/autism live. Have I mentioned everything? Hey, you know what else? All Ghouls Gala tickets are on sale right now. Now listen, this is the Halloween party for adults in Hollywood. It's the Saturday before Halloween. It's a crazy good party time. We're showing where you can get the tickets. You can go to act-today.org/all-ghouls-gala/ and that's a better website than it was before. Thank you, Chris Desmond. But you can go there and get tickets. The tickets are $150 a piece. I know some of you are like, well, I cannot afford that. I appreciate that. I really, really do. But I want you to keep in mind that at this event, that includes your admission, that includes an open bar for the entire evening. It includes gourmet food. You can eat to your heart's content. It is crazy good food and crazy amounts of food and drink, and plus there's a dance floor, there's dancing, and there's all kinds of other perks, and you get this amazing swag bag. Let me tell you something. $150, well, it sounds like, plus you're there with celebrities and influencers and other people. It is a costume party. There is a costume contest with amazing prizes, and it's all to raise money for autism. I want to keep reiterating that this is a fun fundraiser. So it is $150 a ticket. Now, we're asking if people aren't in the LA area, if you want to buy a ticket, it's the same as donating, right? If you donate $150, what we will do is we will make a ticket available for someone in the autism community. If you do that, there's a place on the website where you can make the choice to do that. Again, it's www.act-today.org/all-ghouls-gala/. That's a mouthful, but I got through it twice. Chris will be so happy. In any case, go and check that out. It's a really good time, and I will be there. I already have my costume picked out. Dr. Grant Pichet will be there. Chris will be there. Many of the people that you see on the show will be there. It's a fabulous good time. So be there or be square. Next week, we're going to announce our honorees, and then you're really going to be like, all right, well, I have to go. So there you have it. All right, let's get busy talking, because I think that's all the disclaimers. By the way, we're working very hard on the toy guide right now. It's a very busy time at Autism Live, very busy time in Shannon's life. But I really wanted to talk about this topic today because, you know, recently I was visiting several of the CARD centers and having an opportunity to meet with staff, but to meet with parents. And as I would sit down and talk with a parent, invariably they would say, well, you know, my child, we went through 2 years of COVID when my child was X years old, and as a result, we're seeing this. And I thought, boy, we really have not covered that on the show. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to go through different age groups and talk about what opportunities your child may have missed and what that may look like now, 5 years later. So let's launch into this, but disclaimer always first, right? I want to be clear that I say this. There is no one size fits all. It was different for all of us what COVID was like. Even I was touring parts of Texas, and, you know, I live in California, and we were very careful in my household. So we really were isolating for 2.5, almost 3 years. Can I be honest? I just stopped wearing my masks. Like, I wouldn't wear it when I'm here or, you know, but if I went into a Trader Joe's, I would put my mask on because I was like, I don't really want to get colds. And then I discovered I kept getting colds because my husband and my child weren't wearing masks. So now I'm just exposing myself to all of it. hoping for the best, right? But the point is, it was different for different people. My niece lives in the suburbs of Dallas. Her kids missed maybe 8 weeks of school, and then they were back in the classroom. That was not the case here in California. And there's everything in between. So, how much you were shut down, to what degree, in terms of your community, but also in terms of your personal choices as a family. If you had somebody who was greatly immunocompromised, I was just talking to a family the other day that they had had a baby 6 weeks before the shutdown. So they were being very careful because this new baby, they wanted to protect her. So everybody's circumstances weren't the same. Everybody's choices weren't the same. And what it was like personally was very different for different people because different resources were available. So I'm trying to give a generic overview just to give you an idea of, oh my gosh, maybe you haven't thought of it, or maybe you've noticed this and didn't connect the dots and go, yeah, no, absolutely, that's why this might be happening in my child's life. But I think more importantly, trying to give you some ideas as a parent of what you might choose to do to mitigate those circumstances. Now, before we launch into it, I want to say one more thing. It is really my hope that most of you have access to and are doing good quality ABA therapy. There was a report that came across my desk this morning, not enough time for me to cover it here on the show, but I'm sure we'll talk more about it in length. But one of the biggest insurance providers in the country was found within the last couple of days. It was reviewed and found that they were skimping on the ABA. Let's say that they were not treating it like a medically necessary thing. And as a result of that, there are going to be large numbers of people who are going to have access to more ABA as a result, particularly people who have TRICARE insurance, because there was this model that they were giving people that was just a parent model instead of getting true ABA, which has a parent model, but also has one-to-one therapy. And the courts have decided that that is inappropriate. So it's a win. But for those of you who've been through the last couple of years and been fighting that, I just want you to know it's coming. So I really hope that whatever you didn't have because of COVID or because of insurance saying, oh, we don't think of them, right? I hope that you're taking advantage of good quality ABA. We've done lots of shows about what good quality ABA is. I'm happy to answer questions about that. By the way, the chat is open. You can be writing to us. We are live. It is Wednesday, September 10th right now. So please feel free to write in. Okay, but I don't want this to be in any way perceived as the things I'm recommending that you do are not separate from they're not instead of ABA. You should be doing them in conjunction with ABA, and if possible, doing it with your ABA team. But these are things that are geared towards you as a parent, things that you want to be focusing on. But it is meant to be paired with your ABA, okay? So having said that, let's launch in, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to think about this. Consider the age of the person when the shutdown began for them. And then we want to think about what kinds of things would they have been learning if we wouldn't have been in shutdown. And we want to think about missed opportunities. What didn't happen for them? Were there diminished opportunities or no opportunities for certain things? Okay, and that's really what we're going to be looking at age by age. So let's launch in first and talk about babies. So I'm really talking about from birth to age 1. What kinds of things might they have lost opportunities for during a shutdown? What I saw from a lot of families is that their babies are not recognizing facial recognition from people other than the people who were with them during COVID. Like some of them just have what we call face blindness. They're not looking at faces because when they saw faces, they were with masks, right? But also we see that there's a fair amount of anxiety for those kids because they're not used to seeing facial expressions. Keep in mind, and this is so scary to think of, but these kiddos that were 0 to 1 are now 4 to 5 years old. So let's go through what that might have lost: the facial recognition of people other than parents, that they're not used to seeing faces that aren't on screen, that they did not hear as many sounds as they would have been exposed to had they been out in the world. And scarily, some of them had less access to health care to identify little things. It could be as simple as an earache, right? That you wouldn't necessarily have caught in a baby. They just would have been fussier. But if it was very hard to get access to health care, or potentially scary taking your newborn in and having them evaluated for an ear infection, there are kids that now have long-running issues in their ears and that's just one example, you guys, of something that didn't get treated and now has created a problem. So some of the possible, and this is by neither column here is exhaustive. I'm just suggesting some of the things that I saw out on the road, some of the things that I've heard from parents. But possible symptoms 5 years later: having a really hard time transitioning to new people or teachers. So if you have a 4 or 5 year old who's really kind of struggling, that it was hard for them to transition to being in a classroom with somebody other than their parents or their caregivers, and now potentially they've gone from preschool to kindergarten and it's hard for them to adapt because they didn't have as many transitions as other kids. We may see that there's a delay in understanding those facial expressions and gestures because they're missing a whole period of time when that would have been absorbed into their brain just automatically and it wasn't there. They're having sensory issues around sound and language. It can look different ways for different kiddos, that we see that some of the kiddos are having trouble decoding sound and languages. So they can receptively take it in, but it takes them longer to process because their ear just isn't tuned to it. And we are seeing some health issues that were not diagnosed in a timely manner, like the ear infections that I was talking about. But even autism, speech delay, sensory processing disorder, a lot of those things weren't being diagnosed because we weren't getting them access to healthcare. Please hear me say, this is not your fault as a parent. This is not you failed. This is just circumstances. And you can get angry about it, and you can certainly have grief. And I want to tell you that your feelings are your feelings are your feelings, and you're entitled to all of them. But what happens sometimes is that we get bogged in the feelings and we stop taking action. I'm going to sneeze, I'm afraid. That's why I'm making this noise. Anyway, it's okay to have your feelings, but if you can just monitor those and say, but I'm not going to let that stop me from taking action now. As far as I'm aware of, nobody is in shutdown right now. So we're having feelings about something that happened before. Don't let it stop you from taking advantage of this moment right here. So let's take a look at the next slide and see what are some things, how can we give some fun opportunities? I also want you to keep in mind that as we go through the ages, these things didn't go away for the older kids. We're going to assume that all of those things are on board, but we're just going to add, right? And all of these opportunities are, again, opportunities that we can do with the older kids as well. So, but especially with younger kids, we want to make a habit of making faces. Make faces with your kids, make them make faces, get in the mirror, play games, listen, it's Halloween time right now. Go to one of the Halloween stores, get a pack of the less horrible, less chemical face paints, and get in the mirror with your kiddo and make faces and paint your faces so that they're using those facial muscles and that they're getting used to making faces themselves and seeing people make faces. When you have a group of people over, play some sort of a game where everybody makes faces. You can attach emotions to it if you want to or not. But get them in the habit of seeing faces, and seeing faces do more than just be still, and make it fun, make it funny. Do tongue twisters and tongue exercises on a regular basis with these kiddos. We see that some of them are being diagnosed as speech delay, but it's really that they're not being understood because they didn't see a whole lot of people using their mouth and their lips and their tongue and their teeth to talk. And they were just home with mom, dad, whoever, and mom and dad understood what they were saying, so they didn't have to work overtime to get somebody to understand them. We need to tighten up what they call the articulation, or, in my field, we called it diction. So we can do that by doing tongue twisters, but there's also exercises that you can do. You can spread pudding around their mouth and have them lick it off. That strengthens the tongue, right? We can pretend that we're frogs. We can do all kinds of silly things with our faces. Even eating crunchy food helps all of our facial muscles, which helps us with oral motor. I also know, I have a member of my family that we have to practice speaking loud because all they did was speak very soft during COVID, right? So we want to project, and we want to teach how loud do you have to be. With other kids, we have to teach them, hey, don't be as loud. You know what's a good trick for that? Go to the hardware store, get a piece of PVC pipe and 2 elbows. It becomes a phone, and play phone with them with the phone. But you know what it does? Because it's hollow, it makes them hear themselves. Because if you say you're being too loud, they don't know what that means. But if you do the phone and you go, okay, now be louder, they can hear what louder is. Now be softer, because it goes directly from their mouth to their ear. Great way to do that. Play games that use the senses. Play games where, it's a smelly time of year in a good way. Like, maybe we've got cinnamon pine cones someplace, and you can hide them and say, let's see if you can smell where the pine cones are. Smell where the lemon is, all kinds of different things. But that's just one sense. That's smell, right? What about, play games with visual? Can you match the two, or can you find the item? What about touch? I remember the game we used to play when we were kids. I don't know, maybe I'm too old. But when we were we had to wait in line all the time when I was in grade school. Your teacher would come and pick you up after you did, whatever, art or whatever, and you'd have to sit in line facing forward. So all you could see was the other kid's back. So we would sit and draw letters on each other's backs. What a great thing. You're learning letters, but you're also learning touch, right? There are books that will help with this. Work on making transitions fun. 4 to 5-year-olds are getting ready to go to kindergarten if they're not already in kindergarten. And a big part of kindergarten is that you're in centers, and then you transition from one thing to the other. So you're doing art here, and then you're going to go do math, right? And it's hard for these kids. So we work on making transitions fun. In the beginning, we only have fun things. We set up like 5 activities, and we're having a good time, and we ring the bell or clap our hands, and then we move on to the next thing. They're not going to like that to begin with, because they're going to go, I was having fun doing that thing, right? And we want to make sure that they're having fun doing the next thing. Eventually, we can work with going from a fun thing to a less fun thing, which is hard. But what we help them to do is realize it's not forever. You can come back and play the other thing at some point. Okay, we're going to maintain regular doctor and specialist appointments. Sometimes you're playing catch up, and it's still hard. 5 years later, healthcare is still going, we don't have as many, so we don't have as many appointments. Shame on them. Shame on them. And let me teach you the phrase, denial of access to care. If you are having trouble getting an appointment for your child or yourself with a specialist or with your doctor, you ask to speak to someone and say, I feel that I'm being denied access to care. They will very quickly get on the phone with you and find you an appointment. It may be outside your network, but they'll bill it as if it's in network. But it's 5 years later, folks. You had a whole lot of time. It's time to get it fixed. and you're paying for your insurance in one way or the other, denial of access to care. It is the phrase that you use. Play art, play classroom, play school, play store. Do all the make-believe things, but because these are social make-believe things, right? Play house, and have your kid potentially play house with other people, but you can do it too. Play teacher, and sometimes if they say, I want to be the teacher, let them be the teacher. Because not only are you learning the thing that you're doing, but you're learning the social circumstances around it, right? Play make-believe, play chef, play restaurant. I love the family that when it's their anniversary, they, money is scarce. So they prepare whatever food for their kids, and then they pretend that they're in a high-end restaurant. And one child is the maitre d', the oldest child, and opens the door. The parents, ring the doorbell, opens the door, lets them in, seats them at the table, gets them the water glasses. Somebody else is the waiter, somebody else is the chef, heating things up in the microwave, and they bring the food out, and then they clean it all up, but they wait on their parents, and it's a ball for everybody, and the parents enjoy their anniversary, right? Play these kinds of things with your kiddos because they missed out on opportunities. You didn't go to as many restaurants with them, and they missed out, so you're going to give them these opportunities. Make sure that you're eating a wide variety of food because some of our kids are especially finicky, and it kind of was easier for them during the pandemic because, you might not have had access to everything, right? You weren't going to the farmer's market. So now it's important to have them have a wide variety of food, especially textures, because our kids tend to get fixated on one or two things and then have food selectivity. If your child already has food selectivity, make sure that you're working with a team to counteract that. But if you don't have it, say hallelujah and make sure that they're eating a wide variety of food. Okay, the next one is very important. Cross the midline. Find activities, and if you need help finding activities, go to Pinterest and put in, for instance, activities for 4-year-olds to cross the midline. You will have more than enough stuff to do for the rest of your life. They'll be 18 before you're done doing the things, right? Crossing the midline is something that we do on a regular basis, but for our kids, we know, research shows that it strengthens the connection in their brain for cognition. So, literally, you guys, they've done studies where they'll do like an hour of something like tennis, crossing the midline. You have the middle line down your body, right? And it's taking either hand, right or left, and crossing that line to accomplish a task. That's crossing the midline. Well, tennis, anytime you're doing a backhand, you're crossing the midline, right? There are all kinds of activities like boxing, swimming crosses the midline, right? There are a whole bunch of activities, but there are games that you can play that are just about crossing the midline. They've done studies where they take kids and they do like an hour of crossing the midline. They then give them a test, right, to see how they do. They have them do, just take the test without crossing the midline. They do better on the test if they've crossed the midline. Across the board, on all kinds of subjects, they speak better after crossing the midline. So have them cross the midline. Do those exercises. Teach self-regulation through movement. Now, this is especially one of these things that, okay, we're going to start this at 4 or 5, but every age range I'm going to talk about, this is critical. That I know, you guys write in and say, well, I on my wish list, I wish my child had self-regulation. Can I tell you, some of it is what your child eats. I'm going to be honest with you. But a lot of it is how much is your child moving. Just on Saturday, I was having a conversation with somebody where they were telling me, that somebody's children are just so busy all the time, that they have constant activities. And I said, yeah, that's good. And they were like, no, children need time to just be children. And I said, no, they're getting to be children in all those things that they're doing. Those things are fun. What are you talking about? Like, let them go and be, I am a big fan, and I said this at the time. I said, my grandmother used to say, idle hands are the devil's work, it's good for our kids to be busy. It's really good for our kids to be busy. And it's good for them to be in motion. There was a couple that when my son was just newly born, that their kids were like ages 12, and then, obviously they're older now, but they were the best behaved kids. The best behaved kids. And I would always say to the mom, what is your secret? Why are your boys like, they're like so amazing, and I don't ever see them, struggling, and they're just super polite, and they're happy, and well-behaved kids, nice and friendly. Like, what's the secret? And she said, oh, you got to run them like dogs. She was like, they swim every day. They had swim lessons, and then they were competitive swimmers. She was like, we don't let them just sit around. Now, just sit around, nobody just sits around, right? Nobody just sits around. So if somebody's reading a book, that's not just sitting around. You're reading a book and you're being transported to another world, right? But when you leave a child and say, just sit around, watch what happens. And it doesn't matter whether they're on the spectrum or not. They're going to attempt to entertain themselves in some way. Now, how are they going to do that, and what are they going to do? If it's productive, and if we can teach them for it to be productive, then absolutely. But then it's not just sitting around. Do you see what I'm saying? No, I always give the example of being at the doctor's office, and there was a dad there with two kids who were totally not on the spectrum, and dad was sitting there with his phone, with his head in his phone. The kids didn't have phones, and he was like, sit down in the chairs. So unrealistic. So he couldn't do it. If I had gone over, and I wanted to, and said, I'm taking your phone, you sit in the chair, he couldn't have done it. He would have been looking at his watch, he would have gotten antsy, he would have gotten fidgety, whatever. Why are we expecting kids to just be able to sit there? Don't. Let them learn self-regulation through movement. Let them, run, let them walk, let them swim. Let them learn, that's how I take care of myself. It's amazing how it works. Hey, Daniel, how are you? So thrilled to have you here. Okay, so let's move on to the next age group, and then we'll go a little bit faster here. So let's look at toddlers who were 2 to 3 when shutdown started that are now 6 and 7 years old. So what opportunities might they have missed that they would have had otherwise? Opportunities to play with other children, opportunities to learn in lots of new settings, being in large sensory situations, and sharing. Those are just some of the things that your child may have lost out on if the pandemic started when they were 2 to 3. And what are we seeing in 6 and 7 year olds now? Social challenges, like they have a really hard time, that they have anxiety issues, that if they're in a large group of people, that sometimes we see kids who just can't hang, that they have sensory challenges, that things are too loud or things are too bright. They're really struggling to be able to make sense of it, and that we see across the board a lot of language delays. And language delays can cover a big area, you guys. It could just be in social language, or it could be in expressive language or receptive language, but we are seeing kids struggling to be able to communicate and advocate for themselves. So what can we do about this? Let's take a look at some of the fun opportunities that we can be giving these kiddos. We can go on to the next slide, Chris. So lots of play dates, like more play dates than you ever thought was possible. Give them lots of opportunities to play with a wide variety of kids. I know I always talk about what Bryce Myler taught me, which is, the most ideal kids to have play dates with are a bossy gut girl. Listen, they're amazing because they'll make believe pretend with your child, and they'll tell them, hey, come over here, you play the dog, I'm going to play the mom. And then they'll switch it up on them, go, all right, now you're the mom, I'm the dog, right? That's great for your kiddo. Having a kiddo that maybe they're an only child and mom has no opportunity because the child's just there with them all the time. They're so grateful to have a play date with your child. And then big families that that middle child that needs a little bit more attention and mom may not have the ability. They're ideal for play dates, but literally everyone, do lots of play dates, make it fun for your child and the other children. Take field trips. Now, if they're 6 and 7 and they, they didn't have opportunity to go places and do things when they were 2, 3, and 4, get out. Go places, go to the park, go to museums, go everywhere that you can think of. You can check out, a lot of times they have free days at the museums, 1 day a month. Just know the crowds are going to be bigger on those days, right? Try a variety of sensory supports. So, I love places when you go that understand sensory needs. Now you go to football games and sporting events, or I always get it wrong, Meow Wolf events, right? And they will give you a bag. And it's filled with sensory stuff. You're never going to use all of it, but play with it and see, like there's headphones in there, there's squishies. Try sensory things to see what helps them regulate. Play social puzzle games. They have a lot of apps that are like this that, and there's one that's like a Disney one, that it's a dinosaur and the dinosaur's constantly getting in trouble. And it shows, here's the problem. The dinosaur, needs to wait in line to be able to get their soda. And, here's what the dinosaur does. And this happens, and it shows the dinosaur getting into trouble. And then it says, what should the dinosaur choose? And there's like 3 examples that the kids can pick from. That's just one example. There's all kinds of social puzzle games, or you can make them up yourself. You can be out and say, okay, here's a problem. And it could be something you're watching or something you're experiencing, and say, what should we do? What should they do? But your child missed out on a whole bunch of that. So play games to put that back. Work on problem solving. Like I said, we're working on the toy guide right now, and I love a good marble run because it works on problem solving. But you can do that with a marble run. You could do it with other toys. You can do it in your kitchen. You can open up the refrigerator door and say, mine dings incessantly if you leave it open. You can say, there's a ding. What should we do? And let them tell you what we should do. I know it sounds ridiculous, but your child would have gotten so much more of that had it not been for the pandemic. And what do you want? Do you want to have a teenager who just leaves the door to the refrigerator open and disappears and doesn't notice that it needs to be closed? Well, teach it to them when they're 6 or 7. Work on advocacy skills. Anytime you're someplace with your child and there's something comes up, don't just jump in and advocate for your child. You can say, hey, wait a second, and then say to the child, what is it that you want, and help prompt them to advocate for themselves. Or, again, watch scenarios and say, if that was you, what would you say to the teacher? Or what would you say to that bully? Work on practice. Play make believe and say, okay, I'm going to be the bully. What are you going to say? And help them to rehearse that. Work on meditation. This is an ideal age that, because they're having anxiety, and almost all of our 6 and 7-year-olds are having anxiety, get a pillow or a stuffed animal. We call them breathing buddies, and you lay down on the floor. You get one too. You lay down on the floor, put your knees up, put the pillow on your belly, and have them put the pillow or stuffed animal on their belly, and you lay there and you go, okay, now we're going to breathe, and we're going to make the pillow go up. And now we're going to slowly let the air out and make the pillow go down. But how slow can we make it happen, right? Very easy to work on. We're starting with just the breathing. But also, if you have a Wii and have the board, there's a whole little, in the Wii U universe, there are several meditation games where your child sits on the board. The board has a sensor, and it sets up this calming environment on the TV in front of them, and they sit there and they breathe. There's a circle. If they leave their eyes open, that they breathe with the circle, but the board notices when they're fidgety, right? And they get rewards for when they are not fidgety, when they can sit and breathe, and it's very calming music. So if you have a Wii U, it's great. And if you don't have a Wii U, look, because a lot of times people are selling them at garage sales. You can get them very cheap. Okay, this is an ideal time when you want to get your child's blood checked and say to their pediatrician, hey, can we just check their blood and see if everything is right? Not just a regular panel, but also we're looking for any mineral deficiencies or anything like that. Some kids weren't in the sun enough. Some of our kids are depleted in vitamin D. Make the passionate plea to the pediatrician to get this blood work done so that if you see that you're low in something, oh my goodness. Like a year and a half ago, we found that I was catastrophically low in vitamin B12. Catastrophically low in vitamin B12. And had we not figured it out, my doctor was like, you were going to be in the hospital in a couple of days. It was that catastrophically low. And yet nobody was checking that. Advocate for your child. Ask them to get the blood work done. And then at this age, we're going to teach good sleep hygiene. And that means we get them on a schedule that they go to bed at a certain time, they get up at a certain time, even on the weekend. I know, you can hate me, you can decide not to do it, but I'm telling you, it will help your child regulate. And they need some stability right now. They really, really do. Okay, let's move on to the next age range. I don't know how we're going to get through this. Okay, preschool. If they were 3 to 5 when the pandemic started, what they might have lost or had diminished opportunities, group learning opportunities, learning from new environments, social play, social problem solving, perspective taking. So now they're 8 and 10 years old, and some of the things that you might be seeing are school difficulties, inflexibility issues, difficulty keeping friends, lack of independence or even motivation to have independence, immaturity, understanding it is not just about what they want. A lot of times what we're seeing with these kiddos is that everything is still an immediate need, that they don't understand waiting. So what are the kinds of fun things that we can work on as parents to help counteract this? Let's take a look at the next slide. We really want to get them engaged in some sort of team activity. Now, hear me out. That might not be sports, but it could be. It could be. They have great organizations for Little League, and I think I'm not a fan of having our kids play football. It should only be touch football and never tackle, but I think Pop Warner has a division that is for special needs kids. I know that AYSO soccer does. But there are other things besides sports that involve team activities, like robotics. Look, robotics has amazing programs across the country that for your kid to be on a robotics team, good stuff. There's even chess teams, there's swim teams, there's all kinds of things. But get your child engaged in something where they have to work with other kids. It is a necessary part of their development that will help them. Attend things like theater and sporting events or concerts. I know it's like late in the summer, but there's still some fall outdoor things, and that's ideal, right? Because if they have a problem, you can get up and walk away and it's not a big deal, but you need to be going to those kinds of things to help them to not have anxiety in those kinds of environments. Great idea to sing in a choir. If your child has a choir at their school, get them involved. I love scouts for this age range, whether it's Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and I love when girls do Boy Scouts and boys do Girl Scouts. Please. Yippee-ki-yay, right? But scouting is good. It's been found to be very good, and it tends to be very inclusive for our kiddos. We want to start working on complex problem solving, where maybe it's more than one step to get it fixed. So going back to the marble run or things in your kitchen, okay, we tried that and it didn't work, so what should we do now? Working on things like that with our kiddos. By the way, we can do this even non-vocally, so many of these things. But we want to start to work on perspective taking. There's an amazing set of lessons and skills, and I hope if you're working with your ABA provider, say to them, let's start working on perspective taking. Because and a lot of times you start with sensory perspective taking, where one person is in one place and we look at what can they see versus what can you see, and then they trade places and they go, oh, I can see something entirely different over here that I can see over here. But we want them to start to realize that what's going on in your brain is not what's going on in somebody else's brain. And that starts with what can you see, what can you feel, what can you hear. Teach about false beliefs. Again, these are lessons that are in skills if you need them, skillsforautism.com, but there's a whole set of lessons. And it's so great at this age range because at the same time, they're starting to learn at school about what's a fact and what's an opinion. I know. Don't we wish we could teach that to some adults right now? What sometimes you have a belief and it's a false belief, right? Like one of the lessons and skills is that you have a cereal box that they're familiar with, and we say, what is in the box? And they'll say cereal, right? But then they get to open the box and it's a toy that's in there, not the cereal, because we have to realize that sometimes we believe 100% because of past experience that something is something, but it isn't always. And they'll be teaching that at school as well. This is a great age to teach riding a bike. And I know that a lot of people are like, I don't know that my child on the spectrum needs to ride a bike. Well, we've discovered that it is one of the milestones, along with catching a ball, that leads to other things for your child, like being able to read, being able to move their eyes in a way that is helpful to them. So if you can, even if it's a tricycle, even if we never get training wheels off, teach them to ride a bike. It's a very good skill for them. And this is the perfect age to clean their diet as much as you possibly can. If you think about it, this is one of the last stops along the way before their puberty, right? So clean the diet up now, reduce the amount of sugar, definitely get the pesticides out of the way, and have them eating a healthy, colorful diet. Okay, moving on. Now we're at school age. They were 6 to 10 when the pandemic hit. Now they're 11 to 15. We're tween and teen years now. What might have been diminished peer interactions, social rewards, growing independence, strong friendships, social problem solving. What do we see now that is a potential result of that? Feeling of wanting to isolate. I'm hearing this from so many parents. Lack of interest in new things or trying new things. That's heartbreaking. Lack of initiative to do anything. We've got parents who are saying they don't want to do anything and I don't know what to do with them. May perseverate on solitary activities. They found ways to cope in the pandemic with things that they want to do that are solitary activities. There's nothing wrong with that, but if they're perseverating it and not able to break away from it to go and do other things, that becomes a problem. Unable to emotionally self-regulate. So what can we do? Some of the things that we can do for this, on to the next slide. We can create fun hangouts at home, make your house the most fun place. And then once it becomes the most fun place and that becomes exciting for your child, have them help you plan it, right? Find clubs for whatever the interest is. If they're doing something solitary at home, find the club that talks about it, right? Teach skills for independence that are meaningful to them, right? Teach and reward personal hygiene. Oh my goodness. They need it right now, right? And they weren't around other kids to go, ooh, you smell, but they are now, and it's hard for a teenager to hear that. So teach and reward really good personal hygiene. Have them volunteer at this age. Critical job skills, have them volunteer. Join a social skills class. They are everywhere. I particularly love the ones that are theater-based, but there are all kinds of social skills classes out there. I also love the peers program, which you can do online, but do it. It's critical for your child. Teach basic sex ed, and if that's not something you're comfortable with, lots of people are teaching that. I think the Ed Asner Family Center does that for this age range online. I might be wrong, but it's important. Don't think, oh, they don't need that, because you'll regret it. You'll regret it. Things are starting to happen to their bodies that they don't understand. It's causing anxiety, and it may cause them to engage in a behavior that they don't know is inappropriate. You know? teach basic sex ed, build their self-esteem. But that can't come from just you. If it's only just you at home building their self-esteem, like it's going to wear off and they'll go, you're saying that because you're my mom, right? Or they're going to think it and not tell you that. So part of that comes from getting it from other people, which happens during the hangouts and the special interest clubs. But praise, praise, praise. Hormones are on board now, and they need to hear from you that they're amazing, and praise them anytime that they do something great. On to the next stage. Okay, now, if your kiddo was a tween, like between 11 and 13, when the pandemic hit and shutdown happened, it might mean that they had a diminished opportunity for self-expression or identification. Like they really didn't get to do the thing where they dyed their hair purple, right? Less opportunity for sports and extracurricular activities, less classroom time, opportunities to social problem solve, like when they were at school. Now they're 16 to 18. Some of the possible symptoms of that we might see are extreme over or under self-expression. And it's, one of those things where you might be like, but there comes a time when every child has to figure out what their style is, and they try a couple before they decide. So don't panic about that. But some kids just don't even know I'm supposed to do a thing where I decide this is not my uniform. I decide what I'd like to wear, and we got to prompt that if it's not happening. Lack of ability to deal with peer pressure. Oh my gosh, that's hard. Quick to experience burnout. Difficulty focusing on during passive learning. It's very hard now. The teachers are all saying, oh my gosh, like I got to have a 3-ring circus to keep their attention because they were home learning, right? Difficulty focus, right. Lack of ability to deal with stress. That's a big one for our 16 to 18-year-olds. So what can we do? How can we help them? We can give them all kinds of choices about their appearance and be very accepting of it, you guys. I'm sorry. I know that some of you, I'm like, oh, you want to dye your hair, rainbow? Let's do it. And I know for some of you that's hard, that, for your personal beliefs. But I hope you realize it's a natural stage that your child is having to push through because they missed some stuff. So my advice is give them choices and embrace it. Unless they're hurting themselves. That would be the exception. Take them shopping, not just for clothes and the things they want, but for everything. Get them used to buying groceries. They missed some of it. Talk to them. Comparison shopping. Now is the time to have a bank account and card. And I know some of you are going to say, oh, this is just for the high-functioning kids. I'm sorry, it's not. Even if you have a child who is nonverbal and struggling with the concept of money, I want you to get them some kind of a card. Now, you can put a limit on it so that they can't use it and run up a huge bill, but we want them, everybody needs to get to the point where they can purchase something for themselves. Now is the ideal time to do it if you haven't already. Have a regular social group that is at their level so that they can be going places and doing things with peers. You do want to work on phone skills. And again, I'm not saying this for just the high functioning kids. I know somebody that their kiddo is considered on the pretty severe side of things, but they got him a cell phone. It has huge parameters on it, but it's mainly so that he could text them. And they were like, he doesn't know how to text. He texts them all kinds of things now. So please don't assume, oh, she's not talking about my child. I think it's important that our kids, even if it's that they know how to dial 911, let's work on some phone skills. Let's work on social media skills. If you're making the decision that your child can be on social media, you have to work on this. If you're keeping them off of social media, okay, that I'm all right with that, if that is your choice. Work on internet safety if they're going to be online. Now is the ideal time. Have them do extra lessons, extra tutors, or coaches, but it's got to be stuff that they either desperately need or stuff that they love, love, love. But notice that I have therapy on this one. and I'm not just talking about ABA therapy, that if you see that you're having problems with anxiety with this age range, there's a wide variety of therapy that could help you. It could be cognitive behavioral therapy, it could be ABA therapy, it could be talk therapy if your child has the ability to communicate, but let's not let things go and fester, right? There are people who can work on things. All right, continuing on, because we're getting there. Now, if your child was a teen, ages 14 to 19, and now they're 19 to 23, let me tell you, this was my experience. Some things that might have been lost or diminished: internships, job experiences, pre-dating, dating, gradual ramp up on independence, adult milestones, things like driving, voting, things of those nature, safe opportunities to try new things. And some of the possible symptoms that we may see is that there are barriers to employment. They don't have enough experience. They don't, they're not used to the kinds of things that they're being asked to do, that they have isolated from friends and from romantic relationships. I'm hearing daily from parents who are like, my kid who's, 20 now is like, they don't want to be out of the pandemic. They want to stay home and never see anyone. Having fear, anxiety, challenges around independence, making unsafe or inappropriate choices. These are all potential, right, side effects. So what can we do to shore up these young people? We can help them to get jobs, either through volunteering, or we've done several shows recently about job coaching, about what you can do to help your teen or adult to be able to get those jobs. I recommend watching Love on the Spectrum as a family and watching and talking about, because we see some things that happen that aren't good choices. This last season, there was the young man who came on the date and wore his headphones and put his head down. And that was what he needed to do for his sensory, but we get to see the reaction of the person he was on the date with, who tried so hard and wanted to connect and then felt like, well, I guess I can't, right? What a great opportunity for our kids to learn from those circumstances and so many circumstances on the show. I really highly recommend. Sometimes you need to get a dating coaching. There are classes that you can take. There are matchmaking things that you can do. We can teach dating etiquette. We can learn job skills. We can tend to the social battery. I think it's really important for kids this age to listen to them when they're going to pace themselves and they're going to say enough, social battery wise, and we need to listen to that. But we have to also lean into their hobbies. If there's something they're liking, like, find arrangements for them to do it, because that's the key to building everything else up, is leaning into their hobbies, their passions, the things that they love. Okay, I think it's the last group that we have, which is adults. So if your child was 20 and up when the pandemic started, here are some things that may have been lost or diminished. Independence, an adult support web, romantic relationships, social supports, job opportunities, and networking to get to the next job opportunities. So what we might be seeing now, and I see this a lot in this age range, that they are unemployed or underemployed, and we need to fix that immediately. I can hear Joanne Laura screaming, they have to have a job to have a seat at the table. But a job also means that you have purpose, that you feel like you belong. We see a lot of depression and anxiety in this age group, a lot of lack of social opportunities, feeling isolated, and needing additional supports for things maybe that they didn't even need before the pandemic, but now there's a need. So what can we do? Here are some ideas. A support group. Hearing it from other people and being in a room with other people, whether it's online or in person, is absolutely amazing. If the person is living with us, giving them tons and tons of choices, that's going to help to lead to dependence. But they've got to have a way to release stress. Now, we've given you a whole bunch of things in the previous examples, all of which would apply, but I'm seeing a lot of community swimming pools being open for lap swim because it's a stress release. That gym memberships are being offered at lower rates. It's a stress release, right? Going to parks and there's a circuit trainer thing, all of those things, but also, looking at what specifically has helped this person in the past. But I think movement is also helpful. Sensory mitigation, whether that's headphones or, ear. I love all the different kinds of earbuds now that don't cut sound off, but help to funnel in appropriate sounds and diminish background sounds. Ooh, there's a lot of them. Having someone who listens, whether that's a friend, a relative, a therapist, amazing. But giving them that sense of purpose, really, figuring out for them what is it that they want to do, where do they feel that they belong in. Again, I know you guys are going to say, well, this is only for the high-functioning kids. It is not. I'm telling you, a job is critical for everyone. Joanne Laura helped me to see that, and it gives a sense of purpose. I don't know how many of you, had to be at home and not work during the pandemic, but I saw a lot of people struggling because, in the beginning they were like, oh, I got 2 weeks off from work, and then it was like, who am I? I got up this morning and I have nothing to do, so what do I do? And then it can lead to some behavior that's not good. People gain weight, right? Other people exercised and lost weight. It's a choice. Again, that regular physical activity, having a hobby and leaning into that hobby. But here's a big one, is having a safe space, a safe place. Now, that can be a room for them at home. It can be, I'm really thinking about the Ed Asner Family Center. I know a lot of people in this age range who, they just love it. They walk through the door and they know it's a safe place for them, that they can be themselves, that they're accepted. Everybody needs that. And just because there's an adult who's on the spectrum does not mean that they need that. Now, we're at the end and we're 2 minutes over, but I just want to take a second to say, if you find yourself going, yeah, but that's not my kiddo, okay, that's fine. Ask yourself, though, then, what do I see in my kiddo? Because remember I said at the beginning, this is not a one-size-fits-all. What were my circumstances? What did my kid miss out on? What opportunities did they miss out on that I wish that they'd had? And how can I fill that? How can I backfill that? How can I help them have a similar experience, if not that experience, right? I know that there are some parents out there who are like, my kid didn't have prom, my kid didn't get to have graduation, and I just want to say to you, some of them, they don't know what they missed, which is tragic, right? If you really feel passionately, then have a party and call it a prom. I don't know. You know what I mean? I swore the first year when my son was a junior and all the friends that he had that didn't get to have a graduation, they had a drive-by graduation, and oh my goodness. And I swore, I said, if we're there next year, I will build a stage at the end of our driveway and I will live stream his personal valedictorian speech. We're having a graduation. If it's a graduation of one, we're having it, right? Because I know that he ended up having a graduation and he got to walk. We were all there in masks, sitting outside, but it was a graduation. But if you're missing something from your child's childhood, how can you help yourself with that? But even more important, if they're missing a skill because of something they missed, what can you do to backfill that for your child, teen, adult, so that we always used to talk at school about Swiss cheese, that kids would come in, and not just kids on the spectrum, all kids would come in and they'd be Swiss cheese. They would know a certain amount of things, but there were holes in what they knew. And as a teacher, you're constantly looking for, if I can fill the holes in this Swiss cheese, this child can launch. And it's the same thing with autism in general. If you figure out where the skill deficits are for your kiddos, where's the knowledge deficit, if you can backfill that and give that to them, they can take the rest of the things that they do know and they can really make some big progress very quickly. I also want to say that, a lot of things were missed because of COVID. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that there were other opportunities that our kids got. That sometimes kids got to be home and spend more time with their parents and their family, or with grandparents. Everybody's circumstances were different, but it wasn't. I remember very distinctly saying one night in COVID that we were all having a hard time, and I said, but mark my words, there will come a day and a time where we'll go, remember when we used to do such and such during COVID? We're going to think back on some of those things and go, that wasn't so bad. I don't want to do it again. Let's be clear. I don't want to do it again. But it wasn't all bad. And we can take action to make sure that our kids don't continue to be in deficit because of what they missed. And that's really what today's show was about. So I thank you for being here and taking the time with me. We'll be back on Tuesday with Dr. Doreen, and then we got a great guest on Wednesday. And I don't remember who Wednesday is, but I know that it's somebody great. But I just want to tease that on October 1st, we are going to be back with, is it the 1st or is it the 2nd? Whatever that Wednesday is. For the first time, it's the 1st. Yeah, thank you, Chris. Fred Melamed, actor Fred Melamed, who is an amazing dad, who every time we get on a red carpet with him, we start a discussion, and then I have to say, we have to cut this short because I got to talk to the next person. And I keep saying, we're going to have you be on the show. We're going to have an hour. We're going to sit and talk about all of it. So October 1st, I can't wait. You guys know Fred Melamed. If you look him up, he has been a working actor forever. He's one of the few people that has the voice of God, that he does voiceovers, and he's got this voice. That's what it's called, the voice of God. When a promo starts and they say, in a world, and it sounds like that particular sound, they call it the voice of God. And he actually is the voice of that in a movie called In a World. So much to talk about. But he's a dad, proud dad, and a lot to say about a lot that's happening right now around autism. So looking forward to it. All right, you guys. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.